right, welcome. I'm going to be your first MC for the night. My name is Cass. I'm one of the organizers here. I am so excited. I see so many familiar faces, but also so many new faces. Thanks for coming tonight. It's great to see you all. A couple of things I want to go over before we dig in for the evening. We have a code of conduct. Please feel free to check it out on DenverScript.com. But the idea is we would like to provide a harassment-free community for everyone. So they're pretty, common rules. But if we see you violating any of them, you might be sanctioned or expelled from the community, and that is at the discretion of the organizers. If you are experiencing any issues, I really encourage you to contact one of us. You can do it anonymously, you can do it on Discord, or a lot of us are on Slack, on like the Denver Tech Talk Slack, or email us, or reach out on DenverScript.com, or slip me a note, or anything. You can have one of us talk to someone, or we can step in if need be. The ground rules I want you to kind of consider are, number one, be kind. Number two, please do not talk over the organizers or speakers. You're doing a great job already. And then during Q&A, I ask that you go for like really constructive questions. Try to avoid gotcha questions or prove a point questions. Our speakers work really hard. We want to explore the topics they're bringing and not necessarily like attack them. Yeah. We're also, are we live? We're live. Great. So in the future, if you're like, I'm not feeling great today, not going to make DenverScript, we're probably live. You can check it out on YouTube. It's at DenverScript Meetup. With this in mind, I'm going to ask that when you ask questions during a Q&A, wait for the mic to come to you. Otherwise, everyone online is not going to know what you asked. So we'll bring the mic over, or maybe the spatula of speaking, and get your question from you. We have a couple sponsors tonight. One being Code Talent. They are giving us this wonderful space. If you've been here before, you've heard us tell the joke that they are recruiters that know the difference between Java and JavaScript. But if you are looking for a job, or if you have jobs and you need them filled, reach out to Code Talent. And then Marlena has sponsored our food tonight. Marlene's one of our organizers. Yes. If you're like, hey, this was great, I loved pizza, I would love to throw a couple dollars, this is Marlena's Venmo. And I'm gonna leave it up for like 5 more seconds in case you're wanting to grab a quick snapshot of it. I love waiting in silence. Great, cool. We are always looking for sponsors. So if your company, maybe it's like the company you work for, or maybe you've got a startup, or maybe you know someone that wants to get involved in meetups, message us, DenverScript@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. We've had a lot of great sponsors. The cha-ching. Thanks to whoever just contributed to pizza. Yeah, we would love more sponsors, of course, because there's a lot that goes into this. It's not just food. We often pick up a lot of the non-alcoholic drinks, name tags, stickers, things like that. Cool. We are also always looking for speakers. Some of you I saw last month, and I gave a talk about talking at meetups. Think about it some more, because I would love some more talks to be submitted. We're looking for some longer talks, always lightning talks. It doesn't have to necessarily be strictly about JavaScript or strictly technical. Anything tangential applies. Like we're not just JavaScript. There's a lot else that goes on in JavaScript land. All right, I'm going to pass this over to Marlena for the news.
Thank you much. Hi again, I'm Marlena. And we're just going to really briefly run over some news items. Before I begin, at DenverScript.com/news, you can find this entire link list for your reference if there's anything that catches your fancy, as well as an archive of all of our news presentations over the, oh my God, years now. So starting with, there's some TC39 updates. The 2025 language specification is available. I read maybe June approval, which is pretty exciting. But records and tuples proposal was withdrawn, which I love tuples, so I was a little like, ugh. But it's just because they don't really want to add primitives. There's another proposal with object-based tuples that might be coming down the pipeline for next time. I kind of understand avoiding the primitives. Some other proposals moved forward, which is great. There was a Next.js patches critical middleware vulnerability. So if you use Next.js in any of your projects and you're like, oh, I got some middleware, you are probably gonna wanna check this one out if you haven't already and get an upgrade out there. And I missed this. Did you know there's a trademark fight over JavaScript? It's fascinating. Oracle's trying to reclaim their JavaScript trademark after decades. And so I think it's a really interesting read if you're like weird like me and want to read about weird legal fights. But we won't go into deep. Other things I particularly enjoyed seeing was this advanced React in the wild, production case studies from ambitious web projects. Learning from past projects is one of my favorite things, and always there's something for everyone in those kinds of really big projects. I also was really interested by this mission jQuery 0 because I still see lots of code bases with jQuery in them, and it makes me a little sad. And so learning more about how to remove jQuery, especially from those beast repos, is really useful. Some fun debugging stories. There's just a lot of cool stuff. And I didn't format this one properly, but this was the one I wanted to pull up during the news, and why I'm going so fast is some features that every JavaScript developer should know in 2025. So I'm gonna just run through the first several because I love Developer Opinion Hour. And raise your hand if you agree that this is a must-know JavaScript feature. Iterator helpers. I would agree with that one. How about the array at method? It's really good. Promise with resolvers. We got one, we got two. Depends on the project, in my opinion. And so I just think this is a fun thing to look through and be like, what are some features of JavaScript that I haven't used recently, or maybe missed their release and should get up to speed on? So even for people who have worked in JavaScript for a long time, it can be helpful to kind of run through and be like, oh yeah, that thing I haven't used in 4 years. It is useful. So that's my little pitch for that. Upcoming conferences, I did not fully edit, but we do have San Diego International JavaScript Conference coming up, ViewConf US in Tampa. Some local ones, Open Source Summit North America and UberConf coming up here in the summer. Are there any more? Oh, Cascadia.js still has calls for proposals open. And Dev2 Next will be down in the Springs this fall. And All Things Open also has their calls for proposals still open. And then I will not talk over the releases. There's lots of them. We're always doing stuff, aren't we? Anyone else have any news they feel like I should have addressed? Oh yeah, let's open that one up. Where did I go? Oh, what a nice. The ultimate conference for software developers and architects. So that tells you a lot, doesn't it?
I had the same question. If you look at the talks, there's a lot of Java-focused stuff, but there is some stuff that's like not just Java. I think it might have started as a Java conference, but a lot of general software development stuff.
Yeah. Anything else? Well, awesome. I'm going to hand it back to our wonderful MC.
Which is me now. Hello, everyone. So we've got 4 lightning talks for you tonight. The first one is me, because only 3 people signed up, and I wanted there to be 4. So I'm going to go first. And like Cass said, we accept talks of all kinds. I'm talking about CSS. Oh, yeah. there's only 20% JavaScript in this talk. I'll plug in really quick, and we'll get started. CJS? Yes, but nobody will let me or agree. So CSS it is. Cool. And there's also a screenception because Michael's screen wouldn't work. But you're up next, so be prepared for when I finish. Okay. Right here. So I'm going to be talking about modern CSS theming. There we go. Let me set a timer. Do I have anybody timing me? Okay. So the way these work is everyone that's going to be talking has 8 minutes to talk with 2 minutes for questions. If they take up the full 10 minutes, no time for questions. And go. Okay, so we're talking about modern CSS theming. Hello, my name is CJ. I am a senior creator at a place called Syntax. Anybody listen to the Syntax podcast? Nice. Anybody seen my YouTube videos? Nice. Yeah, so they hired me about 1.5 years ago to make YouTube videos for them, and that's what I do. And every episode of Syntax and every video from Syntax is brought to you by Sentry. And I forgot the live stream. Now they can see my screen. If you want to know more, syntax.fm or sentry.io. I also have my own YouTube channel. It's called Coding Garden. I haven't actually done it in a while because I've been so focused on the syntax stuff, but I typically do live coding, live streams, full stack builds, those kinds of things. And your first CSS property that we're going to talk about today is color scheme. Who here has used the color scheme property? 3 people. This is going to blow your minds. So this is a more recent property that's been added to CSS that gives you light mode and dark mode completely for free. And I believe this was part of baseline 2022, maybe 2023. I didn't write it down, so don't quote me on that, but it has like roughly 90% browser support. So for these demos, I have this cool little site here that has lots of little UI elements, but let's look at the codes. And if we look at our CSS, if we add color scheme light dark, watch what happens. Instant dark mode. Whoa, yeah, insane. Okay, so what's nice about this is, so this is a completely basic site. Literally the only CSS on the site before I did that was this font family, sans serif. But by adding color scheme light dark, it now uses the browser's system color scheme. So every browser supports this. Firefox, Chrome, Safari. They support these default dark styles by default. And check this out, it's reactive. So if I change my system color theme to light, the site instantly changes. So if you use that color scheme property, you can now get light mode and dark mode for free. And I have these elements down here because you can see that the browser is actually styling those inputs with dark mode and light mode. So if you're implementing a dark theme, you can actually get quite a few of these styles for free. This is supposed to have scroll bars. Yeah, you can see the scroll bars get the dark color as well. So completely for free, color scheme, use it. Your next property is called, or your next function is called light-dark. So you can use this on any CSS property that accepts a color. And the first value is what should the color be when we're in light mode, and what should the color be when we're in dark mode. So let's do a little bit of theming. I'm gonna have some variables. I'm gonna have a dark variable and a light variable. I'll have a foreground variable, and then I'll use this light-dark function. So the foreground, when we are in light mode, will be the dark color, so the text will be the dark color. And the foreground, when we're in dark mode, will be that light color. I'll also have a background color, which flips those 2 values. So the background in light mode is light, the background in dark mode is dark. And then using all of those variables, I'll apply them to the foreground color and the background. So a lot of variable indirection here, but the main thing to look at is light dark. This is the value when it's light, this is the value when it's dark. And just like that, we get a nice ugly beige color as the background. But this is great because once you start tapping into color scheme, you can start using light dark everywhere that you have a color value, and then get a nice light dark theme. Cool. So your next thing to look at is the picture element. Who's ever used the picture element? Yeah, there should be more hands because it's built into the browser, and it allows you to add these source elements here. So what this says is, by default, this picture will show the light logo. But if the user prefers dark mode, we will show the dark logo. So you can add any CSS media query into this media property here. So you could do like device width to swap out images as well, but it also works with prefers color scheme. So this is a way that a lot of people style their sites with light mode and dark mode. They add that prefers color scheme. So right now on the site, we have this dark logo there, but if I go to dark mode, it's not as good because it's like black on that dark slate gray. So I'm in a React app here, and I have this logo component. So instead of just returning an image, instead we will add that in just as you saw it. And because I'm using Vite, I just imported these SVGs. But now, when we're in dark mode, it'll show the white logo. And when we're in light mode, it'll show the black logo. So now we get a nice white syntax logo. So there's your picture media. And next up, I'm going to show you how to do a CSS-only theme switcher. Who's excited? Yeah, no JavaScript at the JavaScript meetup. Okay, so we have this component here. I'm in React, but this could literally just be HTML, right? I have a select element. I have several options here. I've got system, light, and dark. The main thing here is I have these IDs, because that's going to allow me to individually select or individually know which one of these select options is selected in my CSS. So this is ID theme system, this has ID theme light, and this has ID theme dark. So on the page itself, it's just this little drop down. It's not hooked up to anything, but let's hook it up in our CSS. So the first thing we'll do is some super modern CSS tomfoolery. The first thing is has. So we're selecting from the root element. We're saying if the root element has an element whose ID is theme system and it is checked, then set the color scheme to light dark. And I honestly learned this just recently, but usually you think of checked when you're looking at checkboxes. This actually works for drop-down selects as well. So if that option is selected, set the color scheme to light dark. If theme light is selected, set the color scheme to light. And if theme dark is selected, set the color scheme to dark. Simple as. Now I can change, I'm already on dark mode. I can change to light mode. But, and that's awesome, you can clap because it's amazing, right? No JavaScript, no JavaScript. But the tricky part here is you'll notice that that image right there isn't swapping out. And this is actually one of the issues of using prefers color scheme dark, because this only looks at the user's system color preference. Regardless of if your CSS actually sets the color scheme for even the root element, that media query is only looking at the system color preference. So if we want that image to change, we actually do need JavaScript. Now, I only got about 2.5 minutes left. What else do I got for you? Let's save the user preference, because we're using only CSS here, and if I go back to the page and refresh, it goes back to my system preference because there's no way for CSS to save what this dropdown has selected. So for that, we're going to need some JavaScript, and we can save it in local storage. So back over on the theme select, I'm going to take in some props because I need this state in multiple places. So the theme selector is now going to take in what is the current theme and then a function so it can update the theme when you change this dropdown here. So the user will select light, dark, or system. That's going to call that setter, pass the value back up, and then in our app component, we're going to have a state variable. And the key here is when the page loads, let's grab the theme from local storage. And if it's not in local storage, we're just going to set it to system. And then, of course, we have to pass that down to that component. And then we can have a use effect that says, if the theme changes, put it into local storage. And this is where my demo break. Oh, there it is. I found it. Okay. We have a use effect, listen for when theme changes. When it changes, put it in local storage. If the page refreshes, we now have access to it from local storage. That passes it down to the component, and the correct select should be selected. So little bit of state, little bit of JavaScript, but now I can swap between light mode, and then if I refresh the page, that sticks around. I've got 1 minute left. What I want to show you is, notice how my system color theme is dark. And when I refresh the page, there's no flash of theme. That is just a little bit of JavaScript. So if you look in my HTML, right at the top, up at the head here, actually, is that it? Yeah, so, well, my CSS isn't updated. It's actually not flashing, I don't know why. But this is one more tip, is if you want these things to kick in when the page loads, have a script that's like the first thing ever that runs, and then set the theme accordingly from local storage. This actually requires a bit more CSS, because one of the ways you typically see this is you have a data theme attribute on like the top level element. So if we combine these selectors to also look for system, light, or dark, then it will take that into account and the theme will be set when the page loads. Okay, I'm out of time. You should also look into automatically detecting the theme with JavaScript, but thank you very much. And no time for questions now because Michael is up. Oh, no. Are you ready?
How are we doing this? Am I coming up there?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just pretend like your screen is actually connected, and you're good to go. Yeah.
Chris, you tech problems. Okay. Hi. My name is Michael. I moved into software engineering a couple of years ago, and I've done many resumes in the last couple of years, and I realized I hate doing it. So what better way to deal with it than to make an app entirely dedicated to making a resume? I wanted to work on something that was going to be a kind of a portfolio piece that might get me a job or might become a job, and so I settled into this idea of what does it take to make a resume? It's this idea that you constantly update your information, you're trying to figure out what you want to say, you're trying to figure out the value you have and how you're saying it, and then you're making a version again and again and again for every job description you look up, and it's terrible, right? So one day I decided, I was just started up a Next.js app, and first thing I'm going to do is just go through some past pictures. So this is going to be a walk with you and me going down memory lane of some horrible color choices that I made and bad design decisions. So as you can see, the very first theme I picked was named Mocha because I like coffee. I think that's, if you're going to do work, pick things you like, right? Well, not in this case. This is a screenshot of my initial idea of I found myself constantly going into ChatGPT and dropping in a detail and saying, okay, does it have the things I need to say to it? What do I need to do to improve it? So I figured I could move that in here. So this was my first attempt. I was focusing on details, clarity, impact, overall ideas. But it needed more, right? So I started considering okay, what am I going to put in here? I need to put in what the name of the thing is and how do I store all this information, and then, okay, let's move on to some better color choices. Sorry for blinding you there. I'm sure that was a rough change. Let me switch over to the folder again because I have way too many photos. One of the things that I found really challenging in my process of going through this was doing dumb things like this. Where one day I'm like, oh, what if I take somebody's soft skills and make a little bit of a dial that shows the rating? No. No. Why? That evolved into a triangle. Again, I was exploring. I was exploring different things that I wanted to do, and that's a lot of what this project was. It was a way for me to teach myself different aspects, and it's not just about the code, but about the idea of like, what is the button, where are you going to put it, what's it going to mean to the user, what kind of color choices are you going to make, what's the flow of the thing, how are you going to deploy it. And so what started as just like a couple forms kept evolving, and oh, here's some more bad choices. Not bad, it's a lot, right? Like, it's too much for the face. You don't want to read that, probably. I don't know, somebody out there probably does. So I'm going to skip ahead out of pictures and go to what I actually have. So I got to the point where, after a lot of work with a lot of different people, that can be understated. Working with people and getting feedback and collaboration, that goes so far. I mean, I still have a long way to go with design choices, but compared to the very first thing you saw, that's come from feedback from users, and then a lot of the way the detail or the prompting works. I do a lot of AI prompting in this, and I couldn't have done it without the time and collaboration with the career services coach that gave me a lot of the ideas. So I just kind of want to show a couple examples here. So I got to this point where I'd be like, I did a thing at work, was happy. Yeah, so I finally got to this, yeah, of course, there's no context, there's no outcome, this is terrible, right? Again, like, that choice right there to make these checkpoints was something that I was trying to overcome in my own. I'm a perfectionist. I want things to be perfect before I show it to anybody, and it was hindering me in filling out a resume. So what better way than to give myself some very clear items? It's like, okay, that's terrible. That one's pretty good. That one doesn't know yet. It's okay. You get the idea. The other end of this, the very first thing that I really did on building this that I was excited about was just storing all my information and then being like, you know what? This one cares more about my education, so I want to put that at the top of the thing. And then being able to go and say, this is for job one. Save it. Better save. Cool. You get the idea. This was really just kind of a passion project. At least it started that way, of something that I found really terrible that I was dealing with, and where I've gotten to this, and I think is something that Will's going to end up talking about a little bit, is like taking that thing that you see in your everyday life, and how do you turn it into something that other people can make use of. So, how am I doing on time? Yeah, I think that's about what I have to say about this. So, thanks for bearing with me. I haven't publicly spoken in about a year or so.
Sure. With that, we have a couple of minutes for questions, and I have the spatula speaking, so.
You weren't kidding about the spatula.
You said that you're using like AI, so I'm assuming for those checkpoints, is that like running through a prompt of, does this bullet point meet each of those criteria of clarity, context, and all of that?
Yeah, I found it to be a really good use case of like, I was doing it all the time, right? Just take this thing, copy it, get the response, but it wasn't a good response, and it needed more nuance to it. So it's actually 4 different prompts is one for each category, and then the same thing for the different analysis down below.
Cool, and then did you just get an API key and you're using like the free models for that, or is there like a cost to running this?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a cost, and
Sure.
that was some interesting choices. Like, I like Claude's responses a lot more than I like Gemini's responses. I feel like it's more humanistic, but their rate limits are much lower, the cost is much higher, so I try to be selective about when I use it and make sure that, so like the things down here, the things that it's really important about it being as human as possible, that's where I use those. But yeah, I'm trying to use Gemini for most of the fast things to mitigate costs.
Super cool.
Awesome. Next one.
Yeah. My question is, what's next? What's your plan? What's your vision? When's this gonna like launch for the? Do you plan on launching it to the public? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah.
And what are your next steps?
Yeah, so I've got it currently deployed at this point. We're going through a lot of user testing and getting feedback as much as people will give me feedback. It's kind of funny how many people tell their friends the comments they have about it instead of reaching out to me, so I always get things secondhand. But I'm working on setting up subscription, and then I've got a whole list of features like keyword checks, and I want to set up like interview prep and have basically things where you're doing it so repetitively and you're trying to make these customizations for each particular job description. So like for example, like one of the next places I think I want to do this is in professional statements. You don't always need one, but if you want to have one and you want to be a little more casual about it, or you want to be a little more formal, or you want to speak directly to what the company's talking about, then you can get a little bit of help right here. So.
Awesome. Any other questions? We've got time for one more, Marlena says. All right.
Not a question, just an observation. I just noticed that you were self-deprecating about your design choices and things. And I just wanted to highlight the fact that to those that may not know this, that's actually the way to learn. I know it sounds obvious, but I still do exactly the same thing. I push out something that is pretty bad and iterate, and that's exactly what you've done. And that's an example for a lot of developers who are starting out to take on board. That's it.
Actually, if I can find it real quick.
I love that.
Yes, last picture, very last picture. Wall of text. No, just no.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Great questions, everyone.
All right. We're going to take 2 or 3 minutes before Will is up next. So feel free to grab some more food. Looks like we're out of bubbly water. Sorry about that, but there is Bud Light. So check. All right, please finish up your conversations. We will start in 36 seconds. All right, I lied. We're going to start now. First off, I want to apologize. I did not introduce Michael, and his name is Michael Bocim. He's awesome. You should say hello to him afterwards and tell him how good of a job he did. But next up, your speaker is Will Klein. He's a specialist in developer experience, building tools, and sharing how they work. Today, he's going to be talking about how I vibe coded a small project. Please give it up for Will.
Thank you, CJ. I really appreciate that. I saw there was a really fun episode on syntax. Vibe coding is a problem. I thought that was a great way to open this. I don't know what you've heard or what your impressions are of vibe coding, but this is a good episode, and they talk about, they're just looking at the transcript, they touch on a lot of the problems and the opportunities with vibe coding. So what is vibe coding? I actually thought, hey, let's have some fun. I've never really used X's Grok AI, so I said, find me a tweet that explains vibe coding really well. And I found the response kind of funny. And I asked Grok a few questions about, like, give me a tweet about this or that. It never actually gave me a tweet, which was really strange. But in this case, it actually explained itself. It said I couldn't find a single tweet that perfectly explains it in a clear way, because all the posts on X either oversimplify it or mix in unrelated ideas. However, based on the context from various sources, it's an AI-dependent programming approach where you describe what you want in natural language, often vaguely, and let the LLM and cursor or whatever tool you're using generate the code. You then accept the output with minimal review, focusing on the vibes of the result rather than understanding the code deeply. So I decided to give this a try. And I want to talk a little bit about why I wanted to do it for just a moment. And that is, where are we with AI adoption? I tend to adopt things when I think they're ready and they're not so noisy or subject to change that my time's not going to be wasted and my effort's going to be fruitful. I'm actually going to enjoy using the tool and it's going to be worthwhile. This is something from MIT's Sloan School back in early 2024, looking at the adoption of AI. And the number I want to call out is, like, it was below 12% across all these different industries. Most were below 5%. And I think, like, information IT is up at 12%. Even then, early 2024, it was really, really low. And for a moment, I want to poll everyone here. Raise your hand if you use AI every single day as a developer. Wow. I have to say, there was probably more than half the hands up. And that's a really strong, I think the people here are you're very progressive. I was actually at a conference last month where the number was less than half. I want to say it was closer to 30%, which really surprised me. If you're at a conference or definitely a meetup, I think you're going to be more keen to keep up with things. And I think more generally, more broadly, my observation is that a lot of developers are still hesitant, not sure how to use it. And even I've played with it for about a year and a half. I started using AI at the end of 2023. And early on, GitHub Copilot was more effort than it was requiring more effort to use it than it was giving me back in results. And I've tried it over every few months. And I think there was a moment back in last fall. And I did something with Cursor, and I was doing something with React, and I just asked for an import. And it gave me the import I needed. And it said, oh, you look like you're wiring up state for this form, and do you want me to also do this? And I was like, oh, I wasn't even asking for that. And I said, yes, let's see what it gives me. And it gave me exactly where I was going with it. And I realized that I was still very accustomed to writing code by hand. So as AI is getting adopted, I'm thinking, well, I'm still very accustomed to just relying on my own skills. And I know there's an opportunity to be even better as a developer. So I wanted to explore that. And just to compare how things have grown over the last year, I have a different graph here. I might have lost it with the scaling, but okay, here it is. Pay attention to the IT line. Just going a year forward, this is McKinsey did a different kind of poll, so it's not apples to apples, but it's coming up to like 30% now. That's kind of like where I think the adoption sort of is at with a lot of things. It's funny, marketing and salespeople, they're all in. They're like, there's some of the biggest bubbles there. They're really with it, and I get it. With writing all that copy and all this stuff with social media, I think they got the right idea. So I think we're getting to a point where it's time to start trying this. And where's a good place to try this? Well, I've had a lot of different little like, hey, what if I built this kind of ideas? I think Michael's was a really good talk about that. And somebody brought up like how many Apple Notes they had. They had like 3,000. Like, I don't have that many notes, but I have hundreds of tabs open. That's one of my general problems. And it's pretty bad. And I'm doing this on like a 16 gig MacBook. I'm kind of torturing Apple here. They deserve it for Apple Intelligence, I'll say that. But I was like, let's see if I can build an extension. I was up one night. So I'll just show you the commit history for this. And there's a little bit here about what I want to suggest. Nothing like, oh, you should do it, but just something I was playing with. I wanted to keep track of the prompts I was giving AI. And I will tell you, as I prompt AI to do something, it would give me something. And I'd be like, oh, well, this isn't working. It doesn't even compile because it's AI. It's not perfect. It's going to give you imperfect results. But I had to like almost force myself to not make the changes myself. I kept having to force myself to, I really was retraining my own skill of like, how do I build things? And how do I like take my hands off the keyboard and ask AI to do some things that I know how to do, but it can do it maybe faster, or it can do it at least as well. And that's really like the thing that I've been playing with vibe coding is like just build a thing really quickly. And I think this took me maybe an hour. Most of the time was frankly like keeping track of the prompts and doing the commits and doing a little bit of a review. And I frankly didn't look at the code until today, a week later. And the code was actually pretty decent. But I did play around with like keeping track of the commits. And I also had this idea to like tag. I want to keep track of what changes were AI versus my own changes. So there's like one human commit here, which actually could have been AI. And one thing about this I will say is a good best practice is committing frequently, incrementally per step is a good idea. I've heard a lot of horror stories where people will say it to tell it to do one thing. They'll go on to the next step and they'll get that result, but that result will be so bad it'll rewrite things and they'll lose the history on what they had before. And there is something you can do in VS Code and maybe VS Code browsers, editors like, I'm good, with Cursor, which I've been using, where you can kind of get the history back, but you don't want to mess with that if you can help it. So commit frequently and often as you go things and be very incremental. There's also something I had fun doing was like, what version of, what am I using for AI? What's the model? And I asked AI about what I could do, and it said to try using a versions MD file, which you can use for more than just AI models. You can use it for like the tool you have, what editor you're using, JavaScript versions. So I decided to go with that. So I'm keeping track of what cursor model I'm using, which is Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which worked pretty well. All right, I've got 1 minute, so I'm going to speed through just a little bit. What have I got? One thing I wanted to share about identity is, as a developer, I was surprised how I felt after I generated something. Oh, I didn't show you the extension. This is it. I have 174 tabs open right now. But I'm going to do more with this. But after I did this, I felt the same sense of accomplishment of building a thing after using AI, not writing the code myself, because I was thinking about what I was building. And I think that's kind of cool. And I heard this on I've got 14 seconds. I heard this on a live stream with Roselle Scarlett. She does some really good stuff with Goose AI. Look that up, look her up. And there was somebody, the person up here, he said something about, as developers, it's funny we still write code, because especially when we call ourselves software engineers. Because what other field of engineering do like the civil engineers, mechanical engineers, actually build all the things by hand? They don't do that. And I think as engineers, as software engineers, we have the opportunity to actually be engineers, to actually think about the systems we're building. And that's why I had this little generated meme here. It's like, there's more to it than I think what's here, but this idea of we're thinking about making things that are going to work and scale and last, and not just making it work, which hopefully we've always been doing. With that said, check out Roselle, check out what they're doing with Goose. Other resources, Contagious has some really good podcasts on this. You can actually search for AI in his podcast list and get what he's got. I really like this AI catch-up. It's just a solo episode where he talks about all the things AI are built on. There's also a Pieces for Developers AI Summit that's happening in a few days. Roselle's going to give a talk on that, how to vibe code responsibly. And finally, check out Syntax. They have some really good stuff there too. Thank you.
Time for questions or no? Yes, time for questions.
Is the mic on? Yeah, okay, awesome. Questions, all right.
Hey, Will. So I tried vibe coding for the first time on Friday or on Monday after work, and I've used it for autocomplete like stuff in the past, and that's been really helpful. I'm wondering maybe I just need to go with the vibe more. But like, I'm wondering what in your prompting you found helpful. Because when I did it from scratch, there was a lot of stuff where I'm like, okay, I'm about to have to write a paragraph to tell this thing what to do. Whereas when I've done it in a bigger code base, I think some of the context is helpful. So as you were building this or using cursor or vibe coding and other things, are there prompting tips or ways that you found helpful?
Yeah. I don't have a very specific answer to this, but I remember listening to Tejas talking about how AI works and how its context works. Like, I think I would definitely recommend listening to his episode or finding resources so you can understand, like, how does it actually function under the hood? Because if you start to see that, you realize AI it's only thinking about certain things. And when you get that understanding in place, it starts to make sense why it fails or why it will struggle with certain things. And one thing I didn't get to say, which is, I think, a common observation from everybody I've talked to, is the more complex the task, the less useful it's going to be, and the more useful you're going to be, like the more necessary we are. And that was universal across everything. I was doing a very simple browser extension. There's lots of browser extensions on GitHub, so there's tons of things for it to draw from. So this is a very trivial task. It's going to do great at this and do, frankly, a pretty decent job. And I imagine, I actually haven't had, one thing I expect is as I add features, at some point it's going to go off the rails. And I don't know when that is. It's going to vary per project. But there's definitely, when you learn about how AI works, pay attention to how context works, how its memory works or doesn't work or doesn't have that, how it draws information and how it builds these things. And I think you'll start to figure out for yourself, like, what pieces you need to fill in. Yeah.
All right, coming up for the next question. Last question.
Hey.
Hey.
On that, I find it's really helpful to go into into ChatGPT and ask, hey, this is what I want to do. Give me a full PRD with checklists, and then I drop that into a file in Cursor and say, Cursor, follow this. But my question, what's next? What are you going to vibe code next for Tabfinity?
Oh, I like that. I have a lot of duplicate. What? Close all. No, never doing that. Never doing that. Updates are my nightmare, by the way. Browser updates. I want to know what tabs I have duplicates of, and I definitely end up with that scenario. And I sort of want to turn it into a tab manager to I don't want to organize my tabs myself. I want it to figure that out for me, and manage my workspaces. And I think some of the browsers are already starting to do that, but I want to build my own, so just for fun. So I'm just going to keep having fun with it. Yeah. Thank you.
Very much, great talk.
All right, Dan is up next. Where are you? There you are. We'll do 1 or 2 minutes if you need to use the restroom or grab more pizza, but we will start very soon. Check. All right. I know I said 1 minute, but finish up your conversations. Finish them up. 20 seconds. We're going to get started in 20 seconds. Alrighty, everyone. Your next speaker is Dan Cortes. He's a software developer with 10 years of experience. He likes talking about the web, usability, and design. If you can hear the sound of my voice, snap one time. If you can hear the sound of my voice, snap twice. Thank you. Dan likes talking about the web, usability, and design. He's easily nerd sniped and use that knowledge responsibly. Today, he's going to be talking about the bare bones of Babel plugins. Please get it up for Dan.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Dan. I'm going to be talking about writing Babel plugins. And before we get started, I'm curious, could you guys raise your hand if you've used Babel? Okay, lots of folks. Raise your hand if you've written a Babel plugin. 2 people, nice. Yeah, so first let's talk about what is Babel. So Babel is a tool that JavaScript developers, or a lot of us at least, use to compile code, or we did at some point, because there's different compilers, of course, but generally it's a generic multi-purpose compiler for JavaScript. So what does it let us do? You can use Babel to use newer features of JavaScript while supporting older environments. It'll transpile TypeScript, JSX, non-standard JS. So ultimately what it does is it transforms code in arbitrary ways at compile time. So JavaScript goes in, a transformation of it comes out. And transforming code is kind of what you do with plugins. So Babel plugins, in a nutshell, are functions that get called at compilation time with the current state of the abstract syntax tree, which is this crazy representation of your code. And a plugin can return a whole different AST or the same AST with modifications. So what's an AST, or an abstract syntax tree? If we look at this function, square, that takes a argument n and returns n times n, we can think about what the AST representation would be. And this is what that could look like you essentially have this object that describes all the little pieces or nodes of what we just saw. So the entirety of this thing is a function declaration. Dang, let's see. The entirety of this thing is a function declaration, so that's the outermost node. And it has an identifier, which is a parameter with a name n. And as we saw, the body, it says return n times n. So then here we have a body that's a block statement, because of course it is. And then in that we have a return statement, so on and so forth. So yeah, we basically get the source code, transform it into this AST, and then once we have it as an AST, we can start messing with it, which is what we're doing with plugins. So writing a Babel plugin, I will say that before I did this, I was almost scared of going into writing my own plugins, because for some reason these tools are weird and scary, and then you learn how how they work, and then suddenly it's not that scary. So ultimately, to write a plugin, you just install some dependencies like Babel core, Babel types, Babel helper, plugin utils. Some of this stuff is just so you have better TypeScript support. Then you write your plugin, which is what we're going to look at. And then you add the plugin to your Babel config, and if you wrote things correctly, it kind of just works. So let's look at an example. And what we're going to actually be looking at here is this little Vite project, which right now, Vite uses a React plugin, which lets you add your own Babel plugins. Right now, nothing is being applied. So it says, hello world in white text. Let's transform some code. And when I click this counter, we're console logging. Count is 1, 2, 3. So that is the initial state of our project. Cool. And what I did is write my cool plugin. I'm gonna pass it some options, text replacer has a from world to DenverScript, And then heading class name, we'll figure out what this stuff is actually doing in a second, is blue text. So this is a plugin for Babel. It's a function that takes, in our case, some arguments. It doesn't have to take arguments, but it can. So you can like define the arguments that your plugin needs in order to do the thing that it does. And then it returns this declare function call, which is it's a function from one of the dependencies that we installed. And then that ultimately returns this object. So we gave it a name of Michael plugin, and then you have visitors. So visitors is an object where the keys are, they are identifiers to like a thing that will visit a specific node of your AST. There's a ton of types of visitors. We're gonna look at 3: JSX text, JSX opening element, and call expression. And basically, so you could, by the way, just have one visitor, like I just have 3 to kind of build a little bit of complexity as we go along. So JSX text is the visitor that is called in a React project when you have some text, like hello world, let's transform some code. So we're gonna transform our path node value, which is gonna be the actual raw text of every single text node that gets called. We're gonna do a replace all, and if you remember, from was world and to is DenverScript. So we're gonna replace that text, that's gonna be updated text, and then we're gonna set the value of the current node to be the thing that we just replaced. So previously, hello world, hit save, and it says hello DenverScript. Did a transformation at compile time. Let's look at a slightly more complex visitor. So JSX opening element gets called on these guys. So like the opening div, or the opening button, or the opening h1. And here what we're doing is we're saying the element name is the type of like element. And now we're using this T helper, which, so our declare function gets this types, well, it gets an object where types is one of the things as its argument. This is a helper that lets you do some like type checking. We're aliasing it to T. But now we can use T to say like, is this element name a JSX identifier? And if that is true, and the element name.name is h1, now we're gonna push an attribute to this opening element, and our attribute is gonna be a class name, and we're gonna push that heading class name that we have here, which is blue text, which is gonna add just a CSS class, and then I have like a CSS rule where if you have blue text, you become blue. So yeah, this is just slightly more complex using that T helper. And then the last example that we're gonna add is, so if you remember, we're console logging every time that I click this button, and you can actually see that here. So on click, we're saying set count, the next count is count plus 1, we're console logging and then return count. And let's say that you were like, oh man, I have so many console logs in my program and I really wanna get rid of them and not modify any of the source code. Really, we've all been there. So here, this visitor is a call expression, which is gonna look at function calls essentially. So here we're saying like path node callee is the callee, and now like these specific things are just making sure that like the call expression that we're identifying is console.log, and if that is true, then we're actually just gonna remove that. So node's gone, and before saving, every time we log, after saving, we can click this as much as we want, and all the logs are gone. So there are so many different types of visitors that are available to you. They will all get that part of the AST. You can modify it, remove stuff, add stuff, do whatever. And that is essentially what Babel plugins are. They are not that scary. Oh yeah, so we looked at an example. And yeah, that example was super contrived, and it just showed you 3 visitors, but now, hopefully, you know what the stuff is, and you can go look at the docs. There's actually a really amazing ebook that has, like, if this stuff is interesting to you at all, this ebook will be super interesting. It has so much information. But yeah, also like the Babel docs, like list all the visitors and their types and all the things that they let you do. And I will also be sharing this talk in the meetup event. And that's it. That was probably the shortest talk ever given on Babel plugins.
We have time for one question. It goes to Will.
Was there a particular need that came up for learning how to write Babel plugins, or is there something you're wanting to do with them next?
Yeah, so I recently started working on a open source library that has like a ton of, it's like a component library, and they were using Tailwind for styling, and this is a library that other projects consume. So, and we didn't prefix our styles. So if somebody else was using Tailwind, their styles could potentially like clash with ours. I needed to prefix every single class name in our project so that it would prevent that from happening. And if anybody's like a Tailwind expert and it's like, oh, there's like this prefix rule that you can add to Tailwind, totally, but you actually have to add the prefix to all of your classes. It doesn't do it automatically. I wish it did. So since it doesn't, I had to learn how to write Babel plugins and post CSS plugins, which is very similar to this, but honestly simpler. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Great question.
All right, this has been another edition of DenverScript Lightning Talks. We got some time to hang out. Also, Marlena has some words she would like to say, but we have the space until 8 p.m., so when Marlena is done, and then I'll probably say something after that, please talk with each other, say hello to the speakers, to each other, and Marlena.
I just wanted to give a real quick plug. I work at the Boulder Public Library. And until the end of June, April, May, June, our North Boulder branch is electronics studio focused. So if you feel like tinkering with some hardware, there's free help. There's an artist in residence who can help you. There's lots of parts that you're able to get from the makerspace, as well as all of the tools to do the work. And if you come up on a Saturday open studio, you might find me turning an old cell phone into a remote. Thank you.
Awesome. So next month's meetup is Tuesday, May 27th in this exact spot. We don't have a talk right now. If you'd like to give one, please submit. It could end up just being a community roundtable night where we talk about anything that comes up. But if not, there might be a talk. So keep an eye on the meetup page. Thank you all so much for coming. If you could help, once we get the rack out, everyone just put up the chair that you sat in. Like I said, we have till 8. Anything else I should say? All right. Any pizza we need to give away? Yeah, so there's pizza. If you want to take a pizza home or some slices, please do that. Thank you so much.